Welcome back to ModCons. Today I'm joined by Lucy Trimnell, the Queen of the Southwest, and she's an icon on Twitter. So I felt like she'd be the perfect person to mock the week with me this week and discuss the week in politics. Thanks so much for joining me, Lucy.
Oh no, thank you for having me. It's going to be a very interesting discussion, I'm sure. But Queen of the Southwest, nah.
You are the Queen of Somerset, at least.
Well, look, I'll take it. I
You'll
will
take
take
it.
it.
It's been quite a busy week in politics.
Yeah,
It's basically been kind of overtaken by Nigel Farage on one side and Andy Burnham on another side for different varying reasons. I guess the
yeah.
proper place to start, I don't know if you saw it, was the question time interview yesterday. Did you have a chance to have a look?
So on BBC Question Time last night,
Yeah.
yes. So I watched it, Jamila. Now I don't always watch Question Time,
So,
but I thought, well, I'll give it a watch because of this, and it was an interesting one. It was different,
yes.
and normally it's something I catch the end of. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was quite something to sit down and watch the whole thing.
It was. It was very good. So obviously for everyone who didn't have a chance to check it out, it was the by-election special, so the Makerfield by-election special. So we had a Conservative, Michael Winstanley, a friend of the show, and all of us in the Conservative Party. We had a Lib Dem, a Green, Labour, Andy Burnham, and Robert Kenyon, who was a Reform candidate. So it was a really interesting mix. So Rupert Lowe was quite upset that he wasn't on the panel because Restorer, I think they are actually polling third.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess they didn't think that they would really add anything to the debate, or maybe they just thought nationally, not sure.
No, I didn't know why, to be honest with you. I think probably the whole design of the studio doesn't fit more people. And
Yeah,
I think if you start, because if you look at the parties that are polling very low, we already had some on, and I think Count Binface would have a case to make for being on if we had everybody on. But they are polling higher, and yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, really. But would they have been big rows, big fireworks between Restore and Reform? I don't know.
they have.
I've not seen anything of their candidate at all, actually.
No, that's the thing, not their actual candidate, more the kind of
No.
the party.
Yes, and if they weren't going to put their candidate on, if it was Rupert Lowe that wanted to go on, that might explain why.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know that that's the case.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what are your thoughts on the reform, restore battle? Do you think they are two sides of the same coin, or do you think they're quite different parties?
Oh gosh, I've no idea. If I was to be perfectly honest, I would say that Reform came in, had the accusation of being another UKIP, attracting BNP type people, and the sort of more further reaches of the right.
Yeah.
And so they've worked very, very hard to distance themselves from that. Nigel Farage has been very clear they don't like Tommy Robinson and they
Yeah.
won't give him airtime or anybody who has that shares those views. Remember when they were getting rid of candidates, if they'd ever retweeted Tommy Robinson and things. And then Restore came along and said, we love Tommy Robinson. We think he's the bee's knees. We love everybody who believes in ethno-nationalism. I think that's what they say, but I
Yeah.
think that there's a strong following for that kind of belief. And I think
Yeah.
Reform have been caught. That image of the man and the woman walking down the street and the guys looking backwards. And I
Yeah.
kind of feel you could use that meme for how Reform are looking at Restore at the moment and going, oh. Because I think that they're taking a lot of the people
Yeah.
who had gone to Reform because it was better than anything else and have now gone to Restore because it's more in line with their
Yeah.
thoughts and ideas. So I don't think they are the same party.
Yeah.
But I think Reform are now struggling to actually create an identity for themselves because they look like Tory Mark II,
Yeah.
Tory Light, or whatever. And actually, do they more want to be hardline like Restore? So I think they're stuck.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, right? When you try and be all things to all people, and I think that's probably what we found at the end of our last government,
Yes.
that you try to please everyone and you end up just being completely faceless. There is no
Yes.
direction. You don't stand for anything. You're kind of just a blob.
Yes, absolutely. A Lib Dem. I
A
mean,
Lib
that's how
Dem.
that's how the Lib Dems are. And maybe that's some of the accusations that are leveled at us now because we didn't have that sort of certain identity. And of course we do now very strongly, but I think Reform are now hurriedly trying to catch up between these two things. They're trying to balance all of it and be full of ex-Tories, but at the same time be more hardline. And I think they're really struggling.
Yeah, I think that was probably their kind of biggest error, was taking on so many ex-conservatives and not necessarily the best of the ex-conservatives either.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was probably their turning point, really, I'd say.
Yes.
So the question time special, it was really interesting. So it opened with quite a punchy start. So within 5 minutes, we had quite an iconic statement from an audience member who said to Robert Kenyon, he was basically saying Andy Burnham's a career politician and you don't want to vote for him, you want to vote for me. I'm a plumber, I'm a normal guy. And then the audience member said, well, I'd rather vote for a career politician than a sexist.
Yes.
Which was quite a savage put down.
And the women around her all kind of went, yeah,
Yeah.
like that.
Everyone was like furiously nodding in
Yes.
agreement. But it
Yeah.
was really bad because I don't think I remember I heard clips of the things he said, but then when Fiona Bruce read out the thing where he said, women have abortions so they can shag anyone they want. It's
I
just,
know. And that was recent. He was trying to say, God, this is years ago. I was a kid. When actually, that was 3 years ago. I think she said it was 3 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, but it
yeah,
wasn't that long ago.
yeah,
And I mean, you say the first 5 minutes opened with that. First 5 minutes were given to Andy Burnham to
yeah,
massively platform himself. And for a minute, I think somebody said to me in a group chat earlier, how Fiona Bruce kept touching Andy Burnham's arm like they were mates. Hey, and he was like, I described him as being like the child who's been sent out of the top set because they're disrupting the class and they go to
yeah.
the bottom set lesson and then they sit there in the class and every time their teacher in the bottom set says, right, here's a question, he's like, oh yeah, I know that, I know how to do that. And that's how it felt with Andy Burnham. He did look out of place because everybody else, not necessarily Michael, but Michael's not a grandstander. I think Michael's very experienced and very
Yeah,
confident in those settings, but the others all just looked as you would expect,
yeah,
Jamila, because I only ever did normal hustings in a town hall or a hall somewhere. These people are on Question Time. Look how many of the new MPs
yeah,
haven't been on Question Time because it's a big deal. So it was a big event. And yeah, I mean, Robert Kenyon right from the start was fighting a losing battle, really, with most of the audience, and
yeah.
rightly so for
Yeah,
what he said.
absolutely. Absolutely, for what he said. And he did seem quite clueless. Like every time they asked him, so he had very good retorts to things like immigration and why people are angry with like things like
Yeah,
HMOs and it was all common sense. And yeah, that's fine, you're right. But then when anyone had any and what are your solutions? What are the policies? He was just like, well, that's for whoever's in charge to deal with. It was very
yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's because he's not in. I mean, he did an interview a week or so ago with, I think it was Manchester Evening News, and the journalist who was asking him was, I think, going really steady on him and really easily,
Yeah,
and asking him questions about policy, and every answer was, "Well, I don't know about that.
yeah,
I'd need to look it up." And you think this is not standard for a candidate for a general election, not
yeah,
sorry, a general election, a by-election.
yeah.
Normally they're embedded in a party, they really know their stuff, they've had years building up a profile, and it really lays him wide open because he doesn't have a clue. He really
No.
doesn't have a clue.
And it is weird because it's like if you want to stand for this party, surely you should do a bit of homework. Obviously, you're not a seasoned politician, you're not an Andy Burnham type, but if you care so much that you want to, stand up and be counted, go and represent this entire constituency in the House of Commons, like at least try and research a bit of what your party
Yeah,
stands for. It does just kind of prove that it is very vibes based. It's like there doesn't really need to be anything beneath the surface. It just needs
yeah.
to sound okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what they're running on. I mean, they have made that their their selling point on this occasion. So that it's like a massive oversteer. They have Matt Goodwin in the Gorton and Denton by-election, and he was embedded in politics for years, and he could answer all of those questions.
Yes.
But people said he's not one of us. He's not a local bloke. He's not.
Yeah.
And so they went completely the opposite.
Yes.
Whether that was because they didn't have the quality of candidates applying for their position, I don't know. But it has left them with somebody who has a terrible track record of things that he said,
Yeah.
who doesn't have a natural flair for politics, who, is so ordinary bloke off the street that it looks like they've found a bloke off the street and not somebody who has the qualities that you need to have in Parliament. I mean, I think it was I think it was Alison Pearson who said we need more plumbers in Parliament a few days ago. And I thought, "Good grief, this is ridiculous. We need people who just know what they're doing. If they happen to be a plumber,
Yeah.
then that's fine. But the
Yeah.
role in Parliament is legislating, is not pointing out this is wrong. It
Yeah.
needs to be fixed. You have to come up with the solutions, and he showed none.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that everyone's jumping on this bandwagon at the moment, and it's not to say that people who have like good normal jobs are not suitable. It's just that they're picking the people who aren't suitable that just happen to have like good normal jobs.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, it does a disservice to, there are probably plenty of
Yes.
people working in the trades industry who would be brilliant. I mean, there've been all kinds of politicians before who've come from very ordinary backgrounds, but
Yeah.
they were really good quality. Even in the past, Labour MPs and people, I think of Alan Johnson, was it? He was a postman. People who did ordinary things who went on to be in Parliament and did it really well, but we seem to be losing that at the moment. And, there's these crazy campaigns and ideas that people have. Like I go to Parliament just to stop everyone drinking alcohol in
Yeah,
Parliament.
I know, that was the most annoying. What
Yeah.
were your thoughts on him, the Green lady, trying to make him apologise to Carol Vorderman down the county?
Well, to be fair, because she was plucked off the street as well, it seems, from what she was saying, out of maternity leave and onto the telly kind of thing. And I did think she did it, for what she was doing, for what she'd been asked to do. I thought she did it well. I thought, well, good on you for giving it a try. I mean, she's 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 a Green Party
Yeah,
representative, and we didn't hear much about their policies or
no,
ideas, so you can't really. There wasn't much to judge. It was really the Andy Burnham show
yeah,
overall, and not everybody. They weren't really given an airing. The Lib Dem guy did it, the typical Lib Dem sort of attack lines and things. They
yeah,
played to their roles really. Michael, I thought he was absolutely superb. I thought he
really
did
good.
such a good. He had a few sort of useful sort of. It wasn't digs, it wasn't attacks, but he pointed things out about
Yes,
Andy Burnham, the very premise of the by-election in the
yes.
first place, which needed that kind of airing because it
Mm.
fundamentally is so wrong. And I've said about how the Labour like to say, well, we shan't be doom scrolling through different prime
Yeah,
ministers, and I'm like, well, that's because you haven't got any.
there aren't
That's
any.
why you've had to cost the taxpayer that millions, in fact,
Yeah,
millions of pounds. Because if Burnham wins and he has to call a by-election in Manchester for the mayoralty, it's just phenomenal how much they're costing things. And I felt that he was, I don't know. I actually don't think it was a very fair
no,
representation on Question Time to put those candidates on who've probably never been in a TV studio
no.
before. The majority of them. I think Michael probably has, Andy Burnham obviously has, and the rest. Oh, so I would give them, well done
Yeah.
for going in there
The
and doing
trial.
it, to be
Yeah,
fair.
I was thinking of like what I would feel in that moment, and it must have been so so terrifying.
Yeah.
But you're right on Michael. He did have some really good like not digs but attack lines where he said, you always said Manchester Man was the best job in the
Yes.
world, so why are we here?
Yeah, suddenly it's not. And he did it really well. There were challenges, and he made appropriate challenges, and
Yes,
he made good representations of the things that he wanted to do
yes.
for Makerfield. He showed he knowed the area. I mean, was it on there? Somebody said they live in Winstanley, and so his
I
very
know,
surname is
I know.
a local place. I thought, good grief, he is your perfect candidate. It was just amazing.
It was good. Obviously, the main headline to come out of that, just finishing up on that, was obviously Andy Burnham under pressure from the audience, finally admitting what we all know, that he would go
Yeah.
to Labour leadership.
Yeah, it wasn't news, was it? It's broadcasters news, but nobody, and fair dues. I mean, he did admit it. He didn't try to, sort of talk his way around it or anything. But I mean, yeah, that's the only reason he's there. And
Yeah.
if it wasn't Makefield, it would have been somewhere else that he's represented as mayor of Manchester.
Yeah,
So, yeah, there's no
100%.
passion for the area necessarily.
No. No, it's true, but it's looking like he'll win it. And now he's obviously started to announce policy,
Yeah.
like the business rates on pubs today, which I think is a good thing. It's good to reduce tax, but you guys did put it up.
But yes, absolutely. And how he wants to fund it, of course, is taxing the big
Business.
businesses. And,
Yeah.
when you think that we're not going, the lessons aren't going to be learned, and they can't be learned because his whole premise is he's got to come in and make things better. And the only way he can make things better is to reverse the things they've done. And he's either got to go ultra left to try and do that, which is
Yeah.
proving not to work, or he is going to have to do the Tony Blair type stuff, the things that Tony Blair is sort of recommending. And then the party is going to say, we've just got another Keir Starmer. We've got somebody else who doesn't understand the working people, who doesn't understand socialism. He's not going to have an easy ride once he's there. And I think he will win. Yeah, he's got a lot to face up to.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people mention this that, because he's been mayor of Manchester for so long, he actually isn't used to the scrutiny, and I think he does get a bit rattled sometimes. It's like, why do you
Yeah.
keep kind of bothering me, kind of thing? And it's like, well, this is
Yep.
what you want, babe.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not going to be easy, and at the moment, I think he's been in Parliament 10 years ago since
Yeah.
he left Parliament. Things have changed drastically
Mhm.
since then as well. And I mean, you think when you run a campaign, when you're running in a normal general election, that's really hard. When you're running in a by-election, that's even harder. He's still the mayor, so I presume there are still commitments he has to that role that he has to fulfill. And on top of that, he's the only candidate who's got to think of the whole country and what he wants to do to apparently make it better. Will he be ready?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess he's probably been getting ready for the last decade, hasn't he? In his bedroom at night every evening, scribbling down his notes. So yeah, no, that's a good point. And so obviously we've had this week, we've had the PM. He does seem to be kind of like a PM in name only. I don't really feel
Yeah.
his presence. He's there, he's in, as I always say, he's in office, but he doesn't seem to be empowered. Do you get that same feeling?
Very much so, very much so. I mean, there've been a couple, I can't even think what they are, but a couple of lame announcements that have come out that nobody's really taking
No.
seriously now because he keeps on trotting out at PMQs the same list of things. I think he said free school meals was at least 3 times that he listed that, and,
That's all
and,
he
you know,
has.
yeah, absolutely. That he is building his legacy now. He knows he's gone. I don't know if he'll fight to remain in place or whether would you want to?
Yeah.
He's got no confidence really from people, and he's in an embarrassing position now of being there but not running anything anymore,
Yeah.
winding it up.
Yeah, literally. I mean, if that mature lady from the audience in Question Time's anything to go by, then
Yes.
the public mood isn't with him. That's
No,
just
no. But I wondered if she was a plant. And I know they have
yeah.
plants because Andy Burnham, I don't think he knew the camera was on him, but he did some kind of communication with him. Like, yeah,
Really?
yeah, if you look, there was something he did, like a nod of the head or
Like
something. Is it
a
that?
wink, wink,
Yeah,
nudge,
yeah,
nudge.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think he probably thought he wasn't on camera. And I thought she's been put there. She's in the front, for goodness sake.
She was
Is it his
very
wife?
she was very activated.
Yes.
Brilliant. She was brilliant. So do you think that if old Burnham gets in, he's going to have to call a snap election? Do you think that's I know he says he won't, but do you think that's the only really chance he has to kind of change anything?
Well, I don't know who said he would. I can't even help thinking that at some point he had said he would.
Right.
And then he said he wouldn't. There was something that he gave, he didn't deny it. There was something along those lines. And then he's had to rule it out and say that he won't. Um, but he's got 2.5 years
Mm.
effectively by the time he gets in, just over 2.5 years, because it's going to take time. They want him in by the time of the conference season so he can open their conference. Nobody wants a lame duck PM running their conference. So he's got to be in by then. So by that point, you're knocking on the door of 2.5 years, halfway through, especially if they're going to go for a May election, because if they go for a July election, they may have had disastrous locals
Yes.
prior to that in 2029. So, looking at that, you've really got 2.5 years left. And, things aren't good. He's
No.
going to get a bounce, but he must know it's not going to be easy and that he's got to seize that bounce for all it's worth. And I think Theresa May did that,
Yeah.
was really high in the polls, and we tanked. And so he has got to get it spot on. So
Yeah.
he knows the risks, but he knew the risks of taking this. My fear is that he will
Yeah.
call a snap election to try and get himself a mandate, because the changes he's going to make are going to be so vast. Although, having said that, the changes that Labour have brought in are so vastly different from the actual manifesto that they stood
True.
on. But I think he will want to say, here is my manifesto, vote for me on it. We can create that distance between us and the Labour Party, the old Labour Party.
Yeah.
And so I feel there's a good chance that he could go next May.
Wow.
Oh,
We'll be
there's not a
disappointed.
great chance. And I'm wrong about everything. It's 50-50 whether someone has a boy or a girl, and I'm always wrong. So don't listen to me and
No.
believe I've just made a biblical prediction, because really, they're going to be wrong.
It's an interesting one though, and I think you're right. He does have to call a snap election, and he may not have the majority that they have now. But if they waited until what 2028, 2029 with Keir Starmer, it it would be much, much worse. So I guess it's like, do
Yeah.
you kind of stem the bleed here in a year's time and just lose like 100 or 50 or however many it is now and then rebuild, or just wait and then lose a whole chunk?
Well, I think the size of Labour's majority, as was the same for us in 2019,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily do you any favours, because it
Yeah.
gives backbenchers far too, you're so distant from the leader of the party for a start. So
Mhm.
you lose that tightness, you lose that support, you get people whispering behind backs, coming up with plots and ideas,
Yeah.
thinking they can get away without supporting the votes that are going through. So I would say he would probably be quite happy to shrink that majority. A
Mhm.
lot of the people he would lose, he's probably looking at who he would lose and thinking that would be quite handy to not have those people. And I don't know who those people are, but there will be a fair few who he will think that won't be so bad. Some of the MPs in traditionally Tory areas, the pressure they're going to be under
Yeah.
to go against some of his ideas. He might think, if we get shot of those, then it's only Tories that are opposing me and not my own people. I don't know that,
Yeah,
but I think he would take that.
that's a really, really good point. And I think you're right there. There is an argument for like a more small, nimble, tight-knit group because it seems to be
Yeah.
working really well with the Conservatives. Obviously, they're very small, but they are like they're working like a pack.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he could do with having a few, maybe 50 less.
Yeah, I would say 100
Yeah.
less. He could have
Oh,
100 less and
100%.
still have a good majority,
Yeah,
couldn't
true.
he? And I think he would be looking to lose a lot of, a lot of these newer MPs as well would probably be likely to go. And,
Yes.
he can sort of maintain that experience, those people who understand the role. I'm not saying they're brilliant, the more experienced ones,
No,
but,
but
the newer MPs I bet they've never even met Keir Starmer. So there's nothing to lose, I don't think.
no. Well, I think he sometimes, I think he invites a few of them down to Checkers every now and then when he's scared that they're going to rebel. And apparently the food is terrible that he puts on. He puts on these like really sparse, like
Oh, really?
lunches. Like here's one, one spring roll. Have a nice time. Don't forget to vote for me next week. So yeah, they're not apparently very good, but
Oh gosh, there's something I didn't know.
give it a
That's
gossip.
very interesting. It doesn't surprise me either.
He's just not very good at politics, and I know people talk about this all the time, but he's just not very good at, schmoozing and whining and dining. I mean, you've got this incredible
Yeah.
estate. Make the most of it. Like, make everyone proud to be able to come here and talk to you and whatever, make it a moment. And he just
But it's
wants
not a socialist thing, is it? I mean,
no,
it
that's
literally,
it.
this big estate is
Yeah,
something they don't really want to
they
be
don't want
part
to.
of. Yeah. So, that's pretty awkward. And so if he goes out with sort of lavish buffets, then, that's not a socialist thing. So they're stuck really with all these great things. I mean, the first thing he did when he got into Parliament, number 10, sorry, was to remove all the historic
I
paintings and
know.
artifacts and that so they demonstrate through their actions that they don't really like the
No,
fineries that come with it. So it doesn't
no.
surprise me that they go to somewhere cheap and buy frozen spring rolls and a prawn ring and stuff.
Exactly. Well, I think the only two that really, really love it are David Lammy and Angela Rayner. They really took to it very well, to the
Do you
highlight.
think? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't follow what they do, but yes, I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But they like to destroy it. They want to pull the ladder up from behind them.
Yes,
They want to
exactly.
enjoy it, but set it loose for anyone else.
That's it. That's it. So obviously this week we had more of the releases of text messages. Peter Mandelson, lots
Mandelson.
came out. The biggest one, I guess, was Pat McFadden
Yes.
saying, the only thing we talk about is how we can tax people to pay benefits. And that was pretty scathing, I guess.
It was, and that's probably what wound Keir Starmer up so much in Prime Minister's questions when he was saying, "Your lot expanded the welfare bill," and and Kemi was right to say, right, we had a pandemic
Yes.
that put that out of control at the time,
Mm.
and I don't remember any opposition.
Yes.
From Labour, in fact, quite the opposite. They pushed and pushed for more and more. They've increased the welfare bill by lifting the two-child benefit cap,
That
which has had
part.
knock-on effects for council taxes and all kinds
Yes.
of things. So they are don't try and make out that they're desperately trying to
I know.
roll back on this and cut it, because they are not, and it's evidence that they're
Mhm.
not. They're quite
Absolutely.
satisfied with it, and they in fact pay more out for welfare than they take in through revenue.
Yes.
It's crazy,
Yeah, that was the
absolutely
news
crazy.
recently, wasn't it? That's
Yeah.
the first time in history that we've now been spending more than we're taking.
It's about 2 billion more, I think,
Crazy.
which is enormous amounts of money.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge. But the
Absolutely.
parity between the two, even if it was equal, it is crazy. Absolutely phenomenal amounts of money. And they're doing nothing to take it down. So, their finances are absolutely stuffed. Have they not borrowed 60 billion more? This was it this month or this year? I can't remember which, but borrowing is also far higher than planned or intended.
Right.
Burnham's walking into a fiscal
Yes.
fire pit. Yeah,
Yes. Absolutely. And I think what Rachel Reeves is now looking at, like PFIs as well, to fund more of her spending and borrowing. It's just out of control. And like you
yeah,
said before, like no lessons are learned. It's mental.
yeah.
So moving on, how do you think the Conservatives are doing this week? Kemi obviously has had a pretty strong performance in very tragic circumstances. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Kemi reacted universally. People have said that her reaction to it, her words that she said, the tone that she struck,
Yeah.
were exactly right. And I mean, she has a habit of getting things right.
Yes.
And people are starting to notice that. And that is because she is right. She is
Yes.
correct in how she sees societal issues, and her understanding, her respect for the family and for their wishes.
Yeah.
She's playing a blinder.
Mhm.
But it's when I say that, it's the wrong word, because she's not playing anything.
Yes.
She just is very, very good
Yeah.
at reading the room, at understanding people in the way that you said about Starmer earlier. He can't entertain, he can't do anything. He's so robotic, and you've got to feel sorry for somebody who is so awkward in those situations. In Prime Minister's questions, he has a very hushed tone. when he talks about difficulty, and then he explodes into his
Yeah.
normal thing, and it's all learned behaviors. He's had to be taught how to do those things.
Yes.
There's no instinct in it. There's no natural, and Davey's the same. It doesn't come naturally to them, whereas it just does to Kemi. When she spoke in what you might describe as parallel tones, it was because she naturally felt it. You all thought when you
Yeah.
were watching her on Good Morning Britain that she was trying not to be emotional,
Yes.
and so it came from the heart, and it doesn't come from the others in the same way. So she just gets things right. She's getting so many people on Twitter saying, I have never voted Conservative, I'm not a natural Conservative, but this lady is phenomenal, she is doing so well, she is attracting me to the party.
Mhm.
And we get to see that in the polls. And I don't really understand. I think it's the people who are being polled. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to the people who are being polled, but I have never been polled.
Yeah.
And most
Okay.
people I speak to have never been polled. And so I think there are a lot of people who aren't within that catchment.
Yes.
And so whether we're being misrepresented, probably by some percentage points, we always have done. We're not there yet. For definite that we're not there yet. We're seeing that in by-election results and things. So but it started in London, and what happens in London tends to creep out to the rest of the country. So yeah, I think we've had a brilliant week. Let's talk about Chris Philp, his reaction to it in saying that we
Yes.
have to look at these issues. Katie Lamb has spoken about this. This isn't just Kemi either. All of our front bench and back benchers are putting in really good performances, solid, a grasp of the issues and an understanding and an agreement on how these things should be tackled, and how we're not just running in and saying we're going to
Yes.
do this. It's about planning how we're going to achieve change, and that's really important. People
Yeah.
will see that.
You can see the hard work. You can see that they're taking their time. They're thinking things through. It's considered, it's authentic. It's not just rage baiting or race baiting. It's not
Yes.
just trying to rile people up and start protests and riots. It's what people have always loved about the Conservative Party, that kind of considered, sensible, common sense approach
Yes.
to life. And you can definitely, like you say, you can see that coming through from across the ranks. So that's great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, it's exciting to be behind that party. And when
Yeah.
you get all these reform types saying things like, next year you're going to lose your seat. Well, I've had that for 24 elections, 25 elections. And, finally they're getting there, they're getting to the right one that I'm going to be in. And they say all of this stuff. But, I'm proud to be a Conservative.
Yes.
And if I lose my seat as a Conservative, that would be 1,000 times better than winning one as a Reform candidate. That's how I feel. So they can come back with all their slurs and things, but people are
Yeah.
starting to pick up on what conservatism is again. It's
Yes.
really important that people understand it and are excited by it. And I think that's
100%.
happening.
I totally agree. So, Lucy, in other news across the pond, we have one of our own conservative. Well, I don't know if, yeah, he's still a conservative. He used to be a special advisor for David Cameron. Actually, I think he was more than a special advisor. He was like his head of strategy. He was like the guy.
Right.
And Steve Hilton, who used to be a Brit,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's now he's running for governor of California as a Republican candidate, and he just had
Oh,
the primaries this week, and he did well. He got through. He's in the running. I think he's number one actually. So now it will be between him and a Democrat. But the Democrat vote, so it was him, Democrat, Democrat. So the chances are now that those Democrat, votes merge, and he will then lose. But it's been quite interesting
oh.
to see.
Oh, so that's quite interesting because I don't know anything about American politics and I
Yeah.
choose not to. So I
Fair.
have thought, should I understand this around the time of the re-election of Trump? Um, but it just seems like a complicated system.
Yeah.
And so I thought primaries were to select your Democrat candidate and but because the
Yes. So
election's
in
not
the
till November, is it?
No, exactly. So the election's in November. So these primaries, the way they do it for the governor and the mayoral is that it's a kind of any party primary. So you pick your top two, they all vote to get their top two And it could be two Democrats, it could be a Democrat and a Republican, it could be a Democrat and whoever else or whatever. And then
Right.
it's whittled down, and then it's the final two that then go to the vote in November. So it's usually Democrat heavy because it's a very democratic, it's a very left-wing state, California,
Yeah.
and it's been run by the Democrats since Arnold Schwarzenegger left. Great guy.
Gosh. Yeah. Was he a Republican, was he?
He was, yeah, yeah, he was a
Ah,
Republican.
right.
So now Steve Hilton's going for governor. And on the mayoral side, we've got a guy called Spencer Pratt. So he, if anyone is like a reality TV watcher, and most people who listen to this probably aren't, but I am. So back in the day, in the like early noughties, there was a show called The Hills, and he was on it as a villain. And he just wasn't a nice guy, and he was a boyfriend of the guy. It was all very silly stuff. But him and his wife lived in California, and their house got destroyed by the fires. And so he felt this like passion to actually do something about it because he didn't feel like the mayor of LA was doing anything about
Yeah.
it. And so he's living in a trailer at the bottom of a dusty hill. Some people say he's not living in the trailer and he's living in the Beverly Hills Hotel, but hey, he says he's living in the trailer. And so he wants, everyone from Los Angeles to have the power back. And he's the guy that's so it's a very much it's from the playbook of Trump, really. It's kind of I may be a reality star or I may be a celebrity or I may be like super rich and famous, but I get you more than the establishment left wing Democrats get you.
Yeah.
And I'm for you. So it seems like the Republicans, I don't know if they'll actually win, but at the moment they're back in play. And
Well, it's
yeah,
been a very troubled place because of those fires,
yeah,
and a lot of people blamed actually the mayor at the time and
yeah,
the whole governorship, however it works over there, because there were it was inadequate. The whole point, the whole aim was climate change, and so they weren't cutting back the bush or whatever
yes,
they call their sort of natural conditions there. And so I remember at the time because those fires were utterly devastating, rich or poor, to
yeah,
see people's homes destroyed like that. And oh, good grief, it was astonishing. And
yes.
actually, you don't hear anything about the rebuild. So I
No,
wonder how that's going. And if there's not much going on, you can imagine a a lot of people, even if your house is still standing and completely fine, if you've got to drive through to
yes,
get to your next destination, go drive through that scene of devastation, you don't want that on your doorstep. And
no,
so,
exactly.
it's in everybody's interest to have it properly dealt with. So maybe people will actually say, let's trust the Republicans for once and see
Yeah,
whether they can put their money where their mouth is
that's it.
and do the things we need doing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. He's run a very good campaign. He went to Karen Bass's mayoral house and said, "This is her house. It's still standing. This is my house. It's a trailer." And it's quite powerful, the imagery. But it does seem to be playing out of that playbook. We've seen Mamdani doing the same kind of videos and that kind of grassroots campaigning. We're seeing that with Zach Polanski, who we
Yeah.
who we briefly mentioned in the break. So what are your thoughts on this kind of new digital guerrilla style campaigning? Do you think that is the future? Do you think these traditional parties need to start becoming more nimble in doing that? Or do you think it's a kind of flash in the pan?
Um, so what I think is if people can be elected on that kind of campaigning,
Mm,
fine, but can they deliver
yes.
the change that's needed? And if they can't deliver the change that's needed, I don't know where society goes from that in
Mm,
terms of their opinion of politicians, because they place these kind of people in a last chance saloon
yeah.
kind of existence. Now, if that last chance saloon fails you,
Yeah.
what's
What's
behind that?
next?
Do they say, well, we're better off going to the thing we thought didn't work, but so I don't know. I don't know what the future is, but
Mm,
but they have to deliver. Everybody has to deliver. It's the
yes.
same with with in UK politics. You can say all the things you want to do, but when that doesn't happen, society, we're much more we're much more in tune because of social media, because of YouTube, all of these things
Yeah.
telling us and showing us how a promise wasn't kept.
Yeah.
Then we've got to be far better at that. And that's why I said about Kemi, you know, in terms of the Conservative Party, not just coming up with ideas, but
Yes.
showing how and the underpinning legalities of it, etc.
Yes.
And so yes, it could work. And I've no idea how close they are. I mean, we saw the elections in Canada. You know,
Yes.
it totally looked like the Conservatives were coming back in Canada until very shortly before the elections were held, when Donald Trump came along, threw in this swerve ball, and it ended up being a completely different result. And so things can change. You know, Mark Carney did change the direction of whatever their Liberal Party is it, I think they have out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he completely changed the direction of that, and then Donald Trump kind of batted the ball a bit further.
Mm.
And so what looks like a dead cert can very much change now, and everyone should be aware of that. So at the moment, overall in America, from what I hear, on the radio and see on the television, it
Yeah.
looks as though the Senate, which is up for election in these
Yes.
midterms,
Yes. Midterms.
is likely to go back to the Democrats,
Yeah.
meaning Donald Trump is on this sort of mad sort of run of trying to get policy and ideas through
Yeah.
before it doesn't pass the Senate anymore. So, but that's no dead cert because you know, but it just goes to show we're much more volatile nowadays and much more up for change.
Yeah, agree. And do you think, because what you said is such a good point, it kind of reminds me like the Pierre Polyev and the Carney situation could be like, Farage slash Starmer slash Burnham. Do you think in that case then that Burnham's maybe going a bit too soon? Or do you think this is the right time for them as a Labour Party to pivot and try and kind of nuke that reform rise?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I don't think I said this. I was doing something else last night, and we had a panel thing, and I was talking on there
Yeah.
about how Labour don't do anything by design. They sort of do things and look at what fell out from it, and so I don't think they ever intended to change. You know, Justin Trudeau stepped down deliberately because he could see that he was bringing the poll ratings down.
Right.
Starmer has no choice. He has no choice. He's lost his party. He's lost all the support in the country, and he doesn't have any choice in this matter. So yeah, I mean, they may have gone too early. I think possibly if Burnham can't turn things around, and I think he's going to have a massive challenge on his hands to be able to do that, which I spoke about earlier. Then yeah, probably they will have gone too early. But remember, there was that external factor of what was it? Donald Trump said he was going to make Canada an
Yes. Yeah.
American
Yeah. Yeah.
state. And
Yeah.
oh God, that
Yeah.
really did completely swing things. So
True. True.
yeah.
Well, lastly, Lucy, before I let you go and live your life and enjoy the glorious outdoors that you have behind you, we've got the Trooping of the Colour next weekend. We've got the King's birthday. Are you going to be celebrating? Do you celebrate? Thoughts?
No, and it's not because I'm not a monarchist. I really support the royal family. I think it's very much either something you do, you think we're going to go to the trooping of the
Yes.
colour,
Yeah.
and so you go and visit. I think I probably went as a child. We've got photos of Princess Margaret and the Queen in a carriage being driven past. If that's part
Wow.
of trooping of the colour, and my mum told my brother that's your auntie, and that's all I remember of it. But we went to London for that. But of course, those are the
Amazing.
days where you could drive and park somewhere.
Yes.
Nowadays, you know, if you're going up to London, you know, I'm not going to go on my own. And if my husband and I go together, it's going to be 80 to £100 for a return
Yeah.
ticket on the train for both of us. The train might be delayed. They might decide to call some tube strikes.
I know.
So, you know,
Takes the
and
fun
when we
out of
had,
it, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah, and when we had three children at home, We weren't paying for five of us to go up to London to
No.
see this, so so I don't celebrate it. If I've got something I have to do on Saturday, I will do that thing. But if I was at home
Yeah.
and I heard it on the radio, then I might pop it on
Yeah.
and watch some of it. But I mean, it's a really important tradition, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people do go to it. And I imagine most of those people are probably people who live in or near London who can
Yeah.
get there easily, or people who really are that, these wonderful people who pitch tents in the street sort of 48 hours
Yeah.
ahead of these events so that they can get a really good viewing spot. And I think absolutely brilliant for those people. I just always wonder where the toilets are and how far you have to walk through crowds to get to them. Like the whole logistics of it for me is quite off-putting, but I think it's a wonderful thing. And I'm really pleased that it's going on.
Well, you were hobnobbing with the king recently, weren't you? You went to
Well,
the garden
yes.
party.
Yes, I did. So I was really lucky, really fortunate. So Somerset Council get a number of tickets every year, and councillors are invited to enter a ballot to get a lucky place, and I did. And I've never put myself in for the ballot before because I've always thought this is just how I work. This is why I don't fly away on holidays as well, because it all just seems like a massive hassle. And so I thought I've got to find a dress, and that will be really hard because I won't find anything I like, and then I've got to book tickets to get there and all of those things. And so,
Yeah.
but I just thought, you know what? This is why are you
Yeah, you
putting
should go for
obstacles
it.
in the way? Absolutely. And so I did. And it was wonderful. Though it was a hassle, it was a massive hassle because it turned out that the summer garden party was held in sort of early spring-like conditions. So it was freezing cold. It was 13 degrees.
Ouch.
So I had to go back to the shops and take my dress back and buy a longer dress that
Yeah.
kept my legs warm, that I could wear
Right.
some shorts underneath, a thermal vest, which I wore under my dress and put a V shape in with a safety pin so that you couldn't see it. And then this lovely, like fleecy jacket. It was, oh gosh, it's
Right.
lovely. It's white though, so I can't really wear it all that often because I'm too filthy. But, I lean against things and oh gosh, it was wonderful. And Queen Camilla, she walked behind the people who'd been put, not that she was going to ignore them, but she came
Yeah.
down behind them to speak to the ordinary people there.
Oh,
And
gosh.
she came over to me, and I wasn't expecting it, so I didn't hear what she said initially. And so I went, "It's lovely to meet you." And I shook her hand, and then she went, "Gosh, you look frightfully warm." And oh gosh, I thought somebody's recognized my lovely warm jacket.
What I've gone through.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so it was well worth it. But yeah, it
That's
was
amazing.
lovely. It was really good. And I recommend everybody, if you're not somebody who's not, I'm not very good at dressing up. I don't really know how to do it, but just do it anyway. My makeup
Yeah.
routine is she tried. Do you get what I mean? And
I
that
love
was
it.
my makeup routine for the day. And it was fine. Nobody kind of looked and went, "Oh, she didn't put much makeup on." It was just wonderful. I loved
Yeah.
it.
It looked amazing. I saw a photo on your Twitter and it looked fantastic. So
A really special event. So if you get
amazing.
invited, I think you
I
would go
would love to
anyway.
go. I'm just waiting for the invitation to arrive. I'm ready, ready and waiting. But
Well,
Lucy, look, thank you so, so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
it's
Thank you for
been
joining me on
great. Thank you so much. Take care, Jamila. Bye bye.